Marcy, who you heard just speak, came and talked about some of the work that she was doing with the 30% Club. And for years, we've been kind of stagnated at London Business School with our percentage of women on our programs. And every year we say, we need more women. We need more. And we hadn't really committed to what that more meant. And when Helena came to campus, we then committed almost on the spot that we were going to get 30% women. And that made a huge difference to having a goal and having a target, so not a quota. I know there's lots of debate, but having a goal about us getting 30% women. And I didn't tell the dean that I had committed to this. But that's okay. And as I thought, he was a little bit nervous about what that might mean to us if we didn't hit it. But I thought we should be kind of courageous and say we were going to do this. And what that made us do is actually look at not just what we were doing when women came to us, but what we were doing with the whole pipeline. So I thought in the spirit of inspiration, kind of one conversation and listening to Helena say, here's a woman who's running a business and has done this as a part of a professional interest, but completely secondary to what her core business was, we needed to take more of a stand at London Business School. So I'm delighted that today's theme is about inspiration and how that affects us as individuals and as corporations. And we'd like this to be a discussion with the panelists to really just talk about this very accomplished group, how they inspire and motivate themselves, but really others, and being in a position of influence to make things like that happen. And that can be in their professional career, that can be in their personal lives, and as we had discovered when we talked about the panel, in multiple countries. So very accomplished group with lots of global mobility, and really how do they stay inspired and inspire others, and their responsibility to do that both to men and to women. So I'll just ask them to make a quick introduction, and then we'll just move right into some questions. So, Mary?
Great, thanks, Diane. I'm Mary Meany. I'm a partner at McKinsey. I lead our practice around transformation and change across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And I've been at McKinsey now for about 13 or 14 years, and I've worked everywhere from Washington to Paris to London, or at least based in those offices, but then really all across Europe and North America. I also led our women's initiative in my spare time at McKinsey for about 4 years, working very closely with our global managing director on how do we really shift the needle and attract, retain, excite, develop truly exceptional women at the firm. So happy to share some thoughts and experiences from that. I lead our Women as Leaders program, which is our network for senior professional women across the public, private, and social sectors. And I have 5 kids, ranging from an almost teenage daughter. I used to think I was good at influencing and stakeholder management, but let me tell you, a teenage daughter is a whole new ballgame, through to an absolutely adorable little boy who is 14 months. And I work part-time. I have since I had my first baby at McKinsey. And I am married to an archaeologist, which, as Agatha Christie once said, is wonderful because the older you get, the more interesting you become.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marcella. I'm currently managing director at Barclays Capital, and I'm heading the financing team for Italy, mainly covering both loans and bonds. I've been at Barclays Capital for 3 years now. Prior to that, I was at Lehman Brothers, where I started my career in 1999, and I finished my career at September 2008 when clearly Lehman got to an end. So, I had a bit of an experience there. If you haven't got it from my accent yet, I'm Italian, so, I moved to London. I've been here for 12 years. And I'm very delighted to be here, and I hope, we can have a very inspirational discussion.
I'm Fiona Dawson. I'm president of Mars in the UK. I also sit on our global board, and I've worked for Mars now for 24 years pretty much as a graduate trainee. I joined from Ireland, where I did economics, and I've worked in a variety of different functions across a number of different markets. So at the moment, as president of the UK, I'm very blessed because I've got all of the functions reporting into me, from sales and marketing through to procurement, manufacturing, research development, etc. I'm also vice president of the Food and Drink Federation, and I represent industry on the public health responsibility deal with Andrew Lansley. I'm also vice president of the IGD, and I do an awful lot of work with not-for-profit organisations, and I am a governor on my eldest son's school board, which he's not too pleased about at all, because I get all the inside track from all of the teachers about what he's up to. So I've got 2 boys, they're aged 12 and 8.
Hello, I'm Carolee Close. I'm recently elected as a partner at BCG, and I've been at BCG for 12 years. It's surprising how quickly that time goes by. It feels like just yesterday that I was at business school. I have an MBA from University of Toronto. I'm Canadian, and I work in BCG leading our European healthcare and IT practice, and I'm very involved in our women's initiative. I've worked part-time since before I had my 2 kids because I enjoy work-life balance, and I've had Fridays off for 7 years now, and I've taken a number of career breaks for leaves of absence and for maternity leave. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and repeatedly get my toothbrush thrown in the toilet on the way to board meetings, which is a sort of imagine everyone does, but. It is something that's, it requires a little bit of a juggle. I also am running our CDC process for consultants in the London office and take a big interest in career development and professional development for women in consulting. And I have a bent on technology, so I lead our digital economy work in healthcare, and I lead our cloud topic, cloud computing for the more geeky people.
Great, thank you. Sil?
I'm Sil Saller. I run innovation for Diageo, which is a drinks business. If you drink, hopefully you drink some of our brands. I think it's the best job in the world. I get to go around. We have teams all over the world, and R&D just creating amazing new drinks. So what could be better than that? And it's been I've done lots of things. I've been a general manager. I was marketing director of the UK before I was in my current job. I've worked for a venture-backed company. So lots of different things. I'd love to tell you that there was a plan to that. My plan actually was to be more like what Diane is doing. I thought I would be president of a university. That's what my application to business school says. But I found that I could do what I wanted to do, which is to make a big difference to people in business. So I stayed, and I'm a new non-exec, so I'm one of those people that has moved that needle from 12% to 15% on FTSE boards.
Great.
And 2 kids who I love.
Great. Thank you, Sil, and thank you for the promotion. I am now the president of London Business. So this is an incredibly supportive and inspiring group.
It's like women moving up right away.
This has just happened instantaneously. So see what happens when you connect with London Business School, Women in Business Club. So we had an opportunity to just talk a little bit before the panel when we were preparing what we would talk about, and there's some great stories here. So we have a few questions that we thought we'd like to hit with each panelist, and then we'll turn it over to some questions and answers for you all. And I realized I didn't tell you whether or not we had hit our goal, and we did hit our goal on the MBA, 31.7% to our MBA students who are in the room. But by doing that, we also hit over 30% on our weekend program for our Masters in Finance, which we think is a great achievement as well. And we have had consistently over 30% on our Masters in Management. So I think the goals do work. So that's another happy ending to the story. So I wanted to start off with Carolee and just talk about, in your career, determining your areas of expertise and how you determine what you want your career to look like. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, okay, great. I think I share this the same opinion to you. As it sounds like there was a plan, and I don't think there was, but I can tell you the story of my development. I guess it started with a little bit of passion, and it sort of has continued with a bit of attention deficit problems. The passion that I have is for healthcare and for making a difference in the way that people are treated in our healthcare system. I also have a passion for technology and the way that technology can influence and change the way people work. So I found that starting with passion and understanding, I basically, out of undergrad, spent 8 years in hospital management. And I realized in working in one hospital in Canada, public sector, that I maybe wasn't going to get the experience that I needed. And I had a mentor that said to me, you've got a lot of potential, but you should go get your butt kicked by some of the big boys in the States. So I kind of went, whatever that is, and I ignored it for a little while, and then sort of sat in the back. So when I did my master's degree, I did that part-time while I was working, and I had quite a big job in the hospital, I thought at the time. Not big compared to these ladies, but it was big for me at the time. And I felt like I really wanted to get more experience and more exposure to different settings. So I joined BCG, and I found that a great platform to explore. And so this is where the attention deficit comes in, because I've explored most industries, from automotive, telecommunications, consumer and retail, you name it, with the functional expertise of IT, so use of technology. So I found that a great way to build what I was hoping for was a more general management skill set. So I found that, through the sort of functional angle and through a consulting platform, I was able to work in multiple settings. And then I found it quite interesting to think about sort of new applications of technology in the way people work. So then I started sort of going back into healthcare. I think what's been interesting in those decisions, I think each one of them has been sort of incrementally useful, but what's been helpful is, early on in my career, building a broad range of experiences. And I look back at what has been most useful, it's actually those settings. So being in Detroit and automotive in the middle of the winter, and then working in our Paris office for a year, and experiencing a very different culture from those two settings, and then a whole bunch of things in between. I've also found it helpful to think about where I have interest in the work, because where you think about your brand and what you're good at, and you could be good at a number of things, but it's really where something connects within you. And for me, that has been about technology and about healthcare. But it doesn't really matter what it is, but it's something that actually wakes you up in the morning, something that you have personal passion for, something that you believe that you can make a difference in. And I think along the way, what's been important is to sort of work that out with a balance. Because at some points in my career, I've spent much more time working. And now when I have small children, I found it actually important to do the things that I have passion for, where I have experience, but then also carve out that time that's quite useful and important to me to be the mum that I want to be. And my model of being a mum is very much dropping my kids off at school and picking them up and checking them in most nights. So that is 4 out of the 5 days of the working week and on the weekends. And that involves a bunch of choice. So I think when you think about managing your brand, I think early on it's great to get some a breadth of experience, to stretch yourself, to take those risks that come up, or to even seek those risks yourself, and to find the thing that connects with your heart. And whether that's a work topic or a home topic, over time you'll probably find that those things converge a little bit more.
Great, thank you. I think it's interesting in the brand discussion, we're next going to hear from Marcella on visibility within the organization and how that impacts progression, and that'll be interesting to hear both in a different industry and also in different career choices.
Yeah, I was actually thinking it's quite interesting, what you said about managing your brand and how you do that. And I think, it's really, somehow an evolution is not something you get day one. Visibility is something you build, and I think it's, mainly a way to, throughout your career you get credibility, and you build on that to try and become more visible throughout the years. And when I started, banking 1999, I remember I joined Lehman Brothers. I did the analyst program in New York, and when I got back to London, I basically first 3 days I had 3 days in a row at work without going home and sleep. And it was like kind of a shock to me. New York was easy, fun. And then, you get there and, you realize that the environment is tough and you are, required to work hard. And I think that in that specific part of my career, how can you gain visibility is through commitment, hard work, and at the same time maintaining, kind of, very clear what's your objective and, where you want to get. I think that probably it happened to you as well. Very often when you talk to people, you have interviews for work, they say, where do you see you in 5 years? Where do you see you in 10 years? And it might seem a crazy question, who knows? But the reality is that that's the key. you need to know what you want. I mean, here I heard before people saying, I didn't have a plan when I started. Well, the plan can change, actually. I mean, I think flexibility is key throughout life, not just at work. What I knew when I was at university, I studied in Italy, was I wanted to work abroad. I studied business and economics, so clearly finance was, kind of my target. But I wanted to be in an international environment, and that's why I moved to London. So going back to my, career experience, I think that it's very important that, and you learn it. I mean, obviously, as I said, it's not something you know day one. To just become and evolve and being somehow also tactical. I am in an environment where when I started, frankly, there weren't many women on the floor. I told you I work, around financing, so I was sitting on the trading floor. I had to deal with traders that really had no time for me. They were rude, they were nasty. So, yeah, very much. But, I learned to be nasty as well with them, so you need to, and that's the way you kind of build your, credibility and you become visible. And then what I've learned is that you need to ask, because sometimes I think, I've learned that I've always thought, if I deliver, what I'm asked or I've been asked to do, that's like factual. So, everyone will see that, but the reality is that you need to manage your brand and you need to, at the right time, say, what you did and, make sure that people see you and appreciate what you have been doing and what you've done. Then going, throughout the career, your visibility is not anymore being, just doing presentation. It means, expressing your ideas. It means, training people, creating a teamwork environment, nurture your network and go through that and try to lead with example and, and actually gain credibility also through, your team. So it's, I think, somehow, I think we need to change. I don't think that if I look back at what I was when I started and what I am today, I'm a completely different person. I mean, my ideals, my ethical value and everything, remains the same. But, to basically succeed at the different levels in your career, you need to adapt and become, be flexible and realize that what was key in the initial part of your career to be successful, is not required anymore when you progress. You need to actually progress and have different attributes and have more leadership skills, again, become tactical and also learn to read the people around you. I mean, we were saying, my environment, even today, where obviously I think women have, they have much more presence also in my industry. But, most of my managers throughout my career have been men. And, what you realize is that you need to read them and, try to basically cope with what they are expecting from you and kind of navigate through that. And another thing that I thought was key was always to be positive. I think that, in any career, I'm sure all of us, as much as in life, there are ups and downs. And I can tell you that in my first years of, at Lehman Brothers, I had many downs and obviously a huge down in 2008. But, I think that, remaining positive, stay inspired and being able to transmit that passion, that positive attitude is key also to gain support from others around you.
Great, thank you. And that leads us nicely into Sil, and it sounds like during the various stages of your careers you redefine or you invent some new things, and innovation is a core part of what you do on your professional life. And how do you transfer that over to your personal life?
Yeah, I guess for me, I can't even separate these topics out. So women, innovation, work life, personal life, it's all like this for me. So during the day, I spend a lot of time thinking about women as part of our business, whether it's women who work in our teams all over the world or women as consumers. because the rise of empowered women is one of the biggest mega trends we're seeing, particularly in emerging markets. So take Thailand, for example. It's traditionally been not okay for women to drink anything, not alcohol in public ever. So as women, transform themselves, they transform what they drink, and what you drink is often an extension of your image. So hopefully they're drinking our brands. But that's increased from 11% to 33% of women in Thailand. And as innovators, what do? We understand people's needs. We question orthodoxies, and we architect products. And I think you can do the same thing with your personal life. That's certainly what I've tried to do with mine. I end up speaking to lots of groups like this, and at this point, some people are thinking, well, that's very, fine for all of us. We're senior and we can choose these things. But I promise you, if you know what you need and you know your priorities, you have more impact, more power to change things for yourself and make the right set of choices by simply questioning paradigms, questioning assumptions, and thinking innovatively, word I can't say interestingly, about how you do that. So for example, the paradigm of work-life balance, I think, is to be questioned. You have a work and then you have a life. Don't you just have one life? And don't many of us spend a lot of time at work? So I think about it as making life work. How do you do that? And how do you get innovative about it? And business does need to help. I create lots of flexibility for innovation people across Diageo, but really it's even more powerful if you take that responsibility for yourself to craft the kind of life that you want. How have I done that? Well, the first thing I have to say is I am pretty lucky. I've been married for 32 years, and I've got two, I'd say, pretty easy kids. I never had terrible teenage years. It's all been pretty easy in that sense. But beyond the facts, I do think it's a mindset. And I live in a world of sort of maximizing what I feel privileged to have, as opposed to thinking about it as sacrifice or compromise. I am grounded in my family, and if I have to make a trade-off, I know what I'm going to do. But it's not a negative thing. The other thing is I don't sweat the small stuff. So I have not been there at every sports event of my kids. Now, my son thinks that's a great thing. He's a prop, and if you're the mother of a prop, it's a terrible experience. I stand on the sideline going, where is he? And he's always on the bottom of the pile. So I'm just nervous the whole time. But I try to be there when they need me, and Jake is 18, Alexa's 23, and I assure you they need me as much as when they were 7 and 12. So I have to be there. I talked about this recently, this whole topic of making life work, at our Latin American conference, Diageo in Brazil a couple of weeks ago. And one of the questions I got from the floor was, well, Silly, you make it sound so easy, is it? And I thought, I should have given the speech on, conquer your fears. And in that one, I talk about all the things that I laid rigid at night worrying about, like, oh my God, I'm gonna have kids, I won't be able to sleep, I won't be able to work, I will be fired. I mean, that's what it looked like to me when I was more your age. I don't think I clocked a lot of this stuff till I was, 40. So one of the reasons I'm here today is because at that time I made a commitment to try to talk about these things to more people so that you guys can be way smarter, faster. And happy to talk more about it.
Great, thank you, Sil. So I think it's interesting to hear the positivity coming out of the panel, and I just wanted to acknowledge the organizers of the conference and the panel because they really wanted everybody to focus on positive and inspiration for women, and I hope you're seeing that already come through the panel. And I want to move it a little bit from individuals to maybe a larger subgroup of individuals. And Mary is coming from McKinsey and being able to look at a variety of different companies from a vantage point, but also has some interesting things to share on leadership characteristics and organizational and transformational change.
Sure. So when Ian Davis, who was our global managing director, asked me, I just got an elected partner, and he said, Mary, I know you've got lots of spare time, so would you lead our women's initiative for Europe, Middle East, and Africa? And then he said, it's an unsolvable problem, right? So how could I resist? So I took it on, and one of the first things that we wanted to look at was, well, first of all, how can we make a real case? And beyond the egalitarian arguments, which of course, we feel hugely passionate about, but how do we make a case that's really going to move people? And so we started doing some research. And we did all sorts of different analyses. We looked at literally 50,000 different individuals at over 100 companies. And we found something kind of interesting. What we found was actually, it made no difference if there was one woman on the senior executive team of those companies versus no woman, right? Having a token woman makes no difference in terms of corporate performance. Having a second woman doesn't make much difference either. But there's a tipping point. And if you got those senior executive teams beyond the tipping point, so they had 3 or more women on those teams, suddenly you start seeing dramatic differences in corporate performance. Now it's causation. It's correlation. It's not causation, it's correlation. But it's really interesting because every time we looked at it with 50,000 individuals at 100 companies. We looked at it with over 89 individuals, 89 companies in a different subset, in a different market. We looked at the UK. Every time we looked at it, if you get beyond a tipping point, what you see is actually a doubling of operating profitability relative to the average performance of the companies, right? So it's a really significant difference in actual performance of these companies if they have diversity of thought, if they have real diversity among the senior committees. So we thought, okay, that's fascinating. And then we asked ourselves, why, right? Why are we seeing that? Every single time we looked at it, we saw this dramatic difference if they got past the tipping point. And what we found was that, and we wanted to stay away from stereotypes or generalizations, but what we found was there were a number of leadership characteristics where women tended to behave more often in those styles. They tended to have more frequent behaviors around participative decision-making, around inspiration, around role modeling, around people development. On average, they tended to exhibit those behaviors more frequently than their male counterparts, and those had a huge difference on corporate performance. But it was important to have a tipping point. It was important to have a critical mass. So we thought, okay, well, that's interesting. And then we said, well, if we really believe that women matter, and we really believe that women bring something fantastic to the party, what are we at McKinsey going to do about it? And so we spent a couple of months pulling together a pretty comprehensive plan. We literally, across Europe, Middle East, and Africa, we put community events and office events and away days and breakfasts and dinners in partners' homes, and we had all sorts of professional development programs, skill building programs, mentoring programs, community, part-time, creches, emergency childcare, maternity coaching before, during, and after maternity leaves. You name it, we did it, right? And we did a big Hearts and Minds campaign with the men, right? Really focusing on our male colleagues. And we did this pretty comprehensively for about 3 or 4 years when I was leading it, and it continues since I've handed it off to someone else. And what's fascinating is if I now look back, what I see is on average, it really kind of worked. We made a big difference. I think what we learned was there was no silver bullet, right? It was silver buckshot. You did a lot of different things. And we really tried hard across lots of different dimensions. But I think what we also learned was the importance of leadership. Because if I look at where we are, and remember, we put this comprehensive plan systematically in place across all of our offices. And yet what we see is some of our offices did phenomenally well. They tripled the number of women partners in a few years. Whereas other offices, frankly, didn't budge very much, right? And so we asked, well, that's interesting. Why is that? And when we looked into it, what we found was actually, if you answer 3 things, you can tell exactly where those offices are, right? So having put in place this exactly the same comprehensive program everywhere, 3 things made the difference. The first one was the commitment, the real, visible, vocal, public, private commitment of the most senior person in the office. In this case, it was usually a guy, right? Were they really behind it? Did they have skin in the game? Were they willing to be on the phone with me on a Sunday night to talk about how are we going to get this person elected, right? That made a huge difference. The second thing was the importance of a critical mass of positive women who were really willing to do something about it. right? If we had enough senior women, different as possible, who are going to say, you know what, we're going to help the next generation. We're going to pull them through. We're going to do whatever it takes to get this really talented group to come through the ranks. That made a huge difference. And then, yes, the third thing was the external environment. It was just tougher in some offices than in others, right? And we saw huge progress in France, the UK, Scandinavia, where the external environment tends to be more favorable. And in other offices, it was a real challenge, right? So that was what we learned from it. And I think, in hindsight, Ian may be right. It might be an unsolvable problem, but it's definitely improvable. It is definitely improvable.
Great, thank you. It'd be interesting to hear, having been at Mars for 23 years, how you might see some of the changes that Mary's talking about within your own organization.
Yeah, I mean, on the surface of it, I might have a slightly contrarian view. In the sense, I've been running the business in the UK now for 7 years in a variety of different roles, having moved up to the global board last year. And over that period of time, we've moved from having 10% of our managers being women to now having 50% of our managers are women. 50% of my board are women. And actually, I'm delighted to know that Syl's fantastic daughter works for us in our grad scheme. But in one of the areas where we've got a real diversity issue, and that's procurement, where we've got 70% women. And I talked to them about their diversity challenge. And what we actually chose to do was actually actively not have a women's program, which may seem a bit counterintuitive. But we talked to an awful lot of the women in our business about what they wanted. Some of you may have learned about the Imposter Syndrome, which will often be this sort of threshold that some women go through and they're waiting to be found out. I don't deserve to be here, what am I doing? So a lot of this was around building women's confidence, and actually what they wanted it was much more subtle, much more around support network. And probably my biggest influence in my career was when I was sales director of the UK, ages ago, and I came back from maternity leave with my second son after 3 months, which wasn't particularly unusual at the time because that was actually what was statutory in Ireland. But I got a question from the floor which said to me, what kind of a role model did I think I was being for women for taking such a short period of time off? And that really hurt me, but it also got me to think, because I suddenly realized women are looking at me and are thinking they have to do what I'm doing to be successful. So I would say to all of you, don't be someone else, be yourselves, be authentic to who you are. And what I've really encouraged women to do, and actually now everyone in our business, is around understanding that your ambition as you go through your life becomes much more rounded. I'm no less ambitious, I just don't want to move to the States. I want to be, so that's the next big promotion, but I don't want to do it because actually I don't want to move my kids out of school. Even though people say, they're very flexible and I don't want to do it. Other people may want to do that because that's what is right for them. So there isn't a model of success, but by being able to say, this is what I don't want to do, it's been really empowering. So for instance, we don't do things like, we don't schedule our global board meetings during half term. We don't have strategy meetings that start before 10 o'clock because people have said, I don't want to go. So they're there and they resent it and you're getting not the right out of them. And the really interesting thing for me is I now have as many men saying to me, I'm not mobile, I want to pick up my kids, this is what I want to do. And I see ourselves as actually pioneering as much for the men as for the women in our organisation to have a happier, and I completely concur with, do what makes you happy. You'll be more successful, you'll enjoy life a lot more, you'll go with the punches, sometimes you'll be a bit on your career, sometimes you'll be on your family, it will move as you go forward. But ultimately you'll be rounded. I mean, the thing that keeps us all probably real is we know we could leave our businesses, they're big businesses, they would continue to move forward. So never think you're indispensable. Do it because you want to do it and you want to make a difference.
Great, thanks. Does anybody want to comment on anything that's been said before we turn it over to questions? Great, well, thank you, everyone. Did you have something to say?
I was just going to add, I think the importance of men in all of this is quite relevant. So with our women's initiative, and I agree with you, calling it that makes it something different. But we found that actually the offices where the policies and the approaches to flexible work, to mobility and the like were equally applied to men and women, we did a lot better. And so I've worked part-time for 7 years, but also a couple of other partners have as well. And those male partners that have are actually the ones influencing the overall partner group around what needs to happen. Yeah. And I think it's the next generation, of which I'd like to think I'm sort of part of, maybe not. But I think that next generation, the men and women, will put more value on family and more value on work and life. And so it's not just a few women in a small place. It's everyone, and I think that helps. And I guess the other thing is, I mean, I don't know if you felt different. I felt different because of women, but I felt sometimes that was an advantage.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
But you learned that a little bit later on in your career. It's not immediate.
Yeah, so I spent my first 10 years trying to dress like the men, trying to not wear high heels, trying to not click around in the hallways and stuff. And actually now I wear nice big heels and and I'm proud to wear a dress and whatever because people remember you. And I think I guess maybe for people that are starting a little bit further, further back, I think to be able to just be confident in where you are, it's easier said than done. But actually, being different is good.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and it's interesting because so a lot of the work I do is with CEOs who are doing big transformation programs, and I think I can get away with so much more than my male colleagues, right? And you say it with a smile, and you genuinely want to help them be successful, but you can tell them the hard truths with a smile, and they're willing to take it in a way that I don't think any of my male colleagues can do. And as a young consultant, I found that actually it was a huge advantage to be a woman, because typically, there weren't that many other women. And the clients would say, oh yeah, I remember you. There were a bunch of other gray suits too, but I remember you, right? It's a huge advantage.
It is.
Good, well, I think that's a good platform for us to start answering some questions from the audience. If you are a student, if you could just say what program you're on, because we have such a wide variety of experience. So just tell people which program you're on so they kind of know how to direct some of their answers. So we have any questions coming out of the audience? One in the back there.
Hi, thanks for taking the question. I'm Priya. I'm doing my Dubai Executive MBA from London Business School. I'm just about to finish it in July this year. So my question to you is, with my experience, the recent experience, I have a question to you. That I was working in the Middle East for the past 2.5 years, and I pretty much at the age of 30 reached to the board level. And now when I moved back here, or even over there, I was facing this challenge where men were like, oh, okay, so you're at the age where you got to have children, so it's better that you move away from your position as a director, don't stay as a director anymore. And even I even faced men in that part of the region where they said, you got to take permission when you want to have children, when you're going to deliver your child, and first and foremost, you have to resign from your directorship post. And now when I came back to this country, and I'm applying pretty much at the same level, this is the question that's raised that, oh, you need immediately, you may take off for your maternity leave, so where does that leave me? So if you were in my shoes, my question to you is, how would you react and how would you face that issue?
God, I wouldn't work for that business, whatever it is. Honestly, they sound dreadful. Sorry, but that's just archaic. God, sorry.
I would vote with your feet, right? Because you're an incredibly talented person, and they should be bending over backwards, doing somersaults and backflips to do what it takes to keep you, right? So I would vote with your feet.
You could move to America and sue them.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to leave the business, I think you've got to play it really, really straight and say, listen, this is none of your business. This is what I'm going, this is what I'm going to do. I'm sure there must be employment laws. I'm not familiar with them here. That really should stop that conversation. And I think standing up to this right here, right now, would put you in good stead.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's unanimous.
Yes.
Give us their name.
Yes. We'll come and tell them. Yeah.
Hi. Sorry. Hi, my name's Yukilo from the Social Investment Consultancy. I think I'm one of those people who dropped out of the corporate ladder. So I started off as a graduate and did one of the strategy consulting firms, and 3 years later, I actually worked with a lot of female partners and thought that that's not where I want to be in 10 years' time. And so I'm just wondering, where you are now, how are you not just getting people through the system, but how are you working to change the system and involving young people to reimagine what they want the workplace to be like?
Do we want one of our strategy consultants to take that?
Sure. So, if I start and then Carly can continue. When we launched our women's effort, we actually had groups of women at all tenures from all of our offices creating it, right? And saying, okay, what's the vision for the future? What does this look like? And we also involved men too. So actually the first guy ever to go on a part-time program in Italy was actually a guy who wanted to go part-time because he loved to ski, and he just wanted to have more time to go skiing, right? And that was kind of his big, and he's like, this is great, I took a 20% pay cut for 50% more free time because I always have a bunch of admin I have to take care of on the weekend, so a day is kind of filled with admin and stuff I have to do that I'm not always that excited about, and a day is skiing. Now I've got like 3 days, so 1 day is admin, but 2 days of skiing, this is great. So we absolutely tried to involve as many of our people throughout the system as possible. And we also try to encourage people to, like literally in London, we said, look, segment of one, just tell us what you want to do. Yeah, any part-time program you can think of, we'll try it, right? If you're a strong performer, we'll bend over backwards. I had my first baby when I was an associate. And I remember, taking 5 long maternity leaves. One time, especially early on, my husband, as an archaeologist, doesn't make a lot of money. So I was trying to think about how do I keep getting paid for longer than my maternity leave period. So I figured that if I ran training programs, recruiting programs, and so on, that they just keep paying me for very long periods of time, which I kind of want to do. So I did, and actually it worked really well, and everybody seemed to enjoy it. I even took a baby into a client meeting once, and the client loved it. They thought it was fantastic. My presentation was really boring. The baby slept through the entire thing, and the big fight was who on the McKinsey team got to hold the baby while I did the presentation, and the partner won because he was the most senior guy there. So, right. So we're encouraging people to innovate and to kind of stretch the boundaries of what's possible, and to say, look, whatever part-time you can think of, we'll try it, right? If that means you want to do 3 days and it's always the same 3 days, if you want to do 4 days, and my own part-time program has probably changed, 10 times. It changes from month to month. I just send a note saying, oh yeah, it's probably more like 60% or 80% or whatever, and they adjust it. So we're trying to innovate, and I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're perfect by any means. It's a journey, but we're definitely trying to just get as many ideas, try as many things, and just see what works.
And before we jump to Carly, I'd be interested in Marcella's opinion on that. Just coming from a completely different industry, and whether or not some of that flexibility might.
Yeah, no, I think that frankly, it's a question of knowing what you want, and just not being afraid of asking it. I think that there is a bit of this concept that banking is an industry where women don't get the same opportunities like men. That while you grow in your career, again, personal life might impact that. It's maybe somehow difficult for me, or I might not be the best example, given that everyone here has kids, is married. I don't have kids, I don't even have a boyfriend, I'm single. And I was actually thinking about what Fiona said before about, over a conference, or someone asking Fiona, okay, but so do we need to, say, take just a very short maternity leave to be successful and succeed? And I got that type of question in a different way very often. Like, I've always been seen as somehow an aggressive woman, being kind of a bit of a tomboy, and always fighting hard, and and I got many questions from women like you saying, so to be successful in your environment, do you need to be a bit of a man-style type of individual? And actually, well, I don't think so. Do I look, masculine? Maybe. I actually think that you just need to trust in yourself, and think that I've never thought, when they were asking me, do you feel uncomfortable in your business? You have to deal with men. I'm like, no, I don't see any gender difference at work. If I go to work, I'm a professional. Whether your name is Paul, Mary, or whatever, it doesn't really matter. I'm here to succeed, and so never lose, that type of objective. So I think it's kind of, I don't think we, as women, we don't have to question or think that we are starting from a lower position versus men. I think we need to feel that, we are great and we can succeed as much as them, and communicate that and give everyone, women, men, whoever is around you, the impression that you're very confident, you know what you want, and whether you need, to leave work for maternity reasons or, to go to the gym. For me, I have many actually hobbies, I have many interests, and I just accomplish them. And it might not be going and bring children to school, but it might be different stuff, but still, it's personal. And I do it, and and initially, I was kind of very, maybe insecure, especially when you're young. You think, oh, if I ask 2 hours off to go and see an exhibition, an art exhibition, that I love, people will think I'm not committed to work. But then the reality is that, you realize that if you do it, no one notices actually, provided that you keep your productivity and, and you get your job done. So I think it's a question of finding your own way to being able to deliver, whatever you are supposed to deliver in your own way, and, and no one will question it.
Great, thank you. Did you want to comment?
Sure. I mean, I think similar approach. We've definitely looked at flexibility, individual, sort of segment of one in terms of the model that works. I think there's a lot of pressure that's put on senior women in terms of like, well, you have to be a role model for everyone. So if you look at the people in your firm and you say, well, I didn't want to be any one of them. I look at half the men and I don't want to be any of them either, right? So, and to your point, it has to be your own model. And I think it wasn't until I had kids where you just come to the edge and you're like, well, if I don't do that, there's no one here for the kids. Because I found myself as a single mum coming back from my second maternity leave, not because of work, but life. As a single mum, trying to make partner and all that kind of stuff, you have to make some choices. And I got much more comfortable with the choices because it was just that much more obvious. Like someone needs to be home, put the kids to bed. And actually, in doing that, my performance has actually gone up. And so people say, oh, well, she's more focused and she's more explicit and maybe she acts even a bit more senior if she says, oh, I got to get off the phone now, thank you. There's times where there's trade-offs and those trade-offs are hard, but actually my experience has been those trade-offs are good. So I would say make your own role model, make your own world, and then work in a place that is set up to make that work. So to the woman before who was talking about, somebody asking about when she's having a baby, like, I wouldn't work there, right? And I think what we've done at BCG is something systemic, and not really around part-time or women or whatever, but it's around what we call predictability, teaming, and openness. So it's a culture of being able to talk about the things that are important to you. And what we found is, people are, whatever it is that you need, it's different. Every one of you is going to have a different equation, and that equation is going to change over time as well. So the best thing to be able to do is be in an environment where you can talk about what's important to you, and you feel like you have the levers to pull to get the things to happen. And if you don't have that, I would say go somewhere else, like go where it fits you. So with my teams, I said at the beginning, we have a discussion of, what's this project going to look like? What do you have going on in your life? What's important to you? And you can talk about, well, I do my email in the morning and really late at night because these things are important. A 25-year-old that's just come out of Oxford or Cambridge is, got to go to the gym and want to see my girlfriend and whatever. And as long as you're in an environment where you believe you can value each other's priorities, I think that's important. But you have to sort of get into what's important for you, right?
Can I pick up on that last remark about the 25-year-old from Oxford? when you look at what different generations are expecting from work, there will be a groundswell around this flexibility. I mean, we're seeing it in Gen X, Gen Y. I don't think millennials are going to work at all by the time So if you think about, if you're the one person in this room who asks for flexibility, it might feel hard. If all of you are individually taking responsibility for asking what you want, while at the same time thinking about how you can add the maximum value to whatever company or organization you join, looking at it from both frameworks, that's massive. I mean, it's the power in this room. So I'd encourage you to take it.
Great, good point. Thank you.
We have time for one more question.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Chaojia Li from MBA 2013. Thank you all for the great inspiration shared. And I have a question for Marcella. I'm fascinated by your experience on the trading floor. So if you found yourself in a small team where you are the only female team member, and in terms of the team decision making, if you disagree with the whole rest of the team, what would you do? And how do you make an impact there?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think, I've always, expressed my ideas. I think that obviously there is time for, everything, and, there are certain expectations also, and I think that I give you, probably giving you an example, it's going to be easier. I mean, when I started, actually no one would have ever expected me to express my idea. So, you're there, you're considered, I've always said, I started my career as a slave, like, I was literally working hard. And, and so, at that time, frankly, I remember, my managers, the other people of the team, I mean, they were not really asking me what was my opinion, they were just telling me what to do. And, and for me, it was kind of, at that point in time, frankly, I wasn't actually realizing really what I was doing. When I joined Lehman Brothers, you need to learn, and throughout experience, you start to build, your background, and you build also, sort of confidence in yourself. So there is a time, when you need to start expressing, your opinion. You don't want to be just considered a safe pair of hands, or someone that does his jobs well, but is not really putting anything into that. So, it's like little by little, taking the courage, to basically, put your hand up and say, well, but why are we presenting this type of idea to the client when maybe, I heard from the other team that, developing this other idea. And, and that's where going back to the point at the beginning of getting visibility, it's a matter of credibility, but it's also a matter of getting confidence, and confidence comes through experience. So, it's kind of, you really evolve as you evolve in life. I think we said before, if we all look back to when we started our career, we weren't, or we didn't have the same attributes, or we did have them, but they weren't so visible because, you needed other attributes to be visible at that time. So I think that, it's really, as I said before, it's believing in yourself, in your ideas. I mean, if you're passionate in what you do, if you work hard, if you invest in yourself, in your team, it's going to be natural, that you will at a certain point start, expressing yourself and not be afraid to do that. And actually, I think challenging people and getting into a room is what I love, and say, let's brainstorm around this, and do we agree? I don't agree. Now that I, manage a team, I always, I'm in a position where they always wait for me to say, what do we need to do? And so I think that also, while you grow, you learn that when you become a leader or you have a team, it's important that you actually stimulate the team to think and express their ideas. And I get mad when I see, the people working with me just, at the computer working all day and never say anything, and you tell them, let's change this into that, and they say, okay. So, have you thought about it? What do you think? Tell me, do you think there is a better way to do it? So I think then you learn also, through mistakes. I mean, I didn't have always managers that were asking my opinion, so sometimes, you actually need to, again, stand up and say it, but, it's, you get it. It's very important that you just believe in yourself, you're confident, you do your job, and frankly, men tend to do it. Men actually, from the first day, they start expressing their ideas. I think we are a little bit more, we tend to, stand up and express our idea only when we are 100% sure of that we are right, that, everyone will kind of say, yes, you are right. But, I think it's a balance of that. I wouldn't say you should be like a man and day one start talking, and at the same time, I don't think you need to wait until you feel comfortable 100%. I mean, it's a bit of a, you need to actually kind of throw yourself sometimes and, put your heart into what you believe in and just, make a bigger step.
Great. Well, I can't believe the time already has flown. I thought it might be nice if if anybody on the panel had some last words of inspiration or anything that they wanted to share with the audience before we close down this particular session.
Well, one of the things that I would encourage you all to do, because I remember vividly when I started to work, is actually capture the feelings that you have now. Don't always look to the future of what you want to be, but actually use the feelings to empathize with people who are coming through in the future. Because the experiences that you have now, even those awful experiences that we've heard about, those will allow you to be a much more rounded person. So you're at the most wonderful stages, all of you, of your careers, irrespective of what course you're on. And just use those experiences to become a great person in the future.
Okay, thank you.
A flip of that is a lot of times you look out to the future and you imagine that you want to be something. And you picture a slow, painful journey to get there. And one of the ways one of my mantras to myself is be that now. So don't wait. If you see women on this panel who you admire, I mean, I certainly do, I'm thinking, how could I be more like that now? And just put myself into that space and start acting like that rather than thinking it's going to be some long journey.
If I could just build on that, the one piece of advice would be aim high. There's this wonderful quote that's attributed to Michelangelo. I don't know if it is actually from him or not, but it basically says, the danger for most of us is not that we aim too high and miss it, but that we aim too low and hit it. And so I just encourage you to aim high, right? When we did the research, one of the things that came out incredibly strongly was that women on average systematically underestimate their own performance, whereas men on average systematically overestimate their own performance. It was striking. It came out consistently in every research that we did. So just aim high, right? Shoot for the stars.
Yeah, fully agree. Aim high and be ambitious and make sure that everyone around you knows it, because if you don't...
Great. Well, thank you very much. I think that's a great way to end the panel, and hopefully you found this inspiring and motivating. I know, like Sil, I really did. So thank you to all of the panelists for sharing your personal and work stories. Thank you.